This video is pretty insane, and a lot of people who see police videos always respond with the same thing. Well, if you just listen to the commands, you're going to be just fine. What if you can't? That's the question posed in a brand new lawsuit by a guy named Brady Mistic. Now, Brady Mistic is just about to walk into a laundromat. You're going to see him for a brief second before all hell breaks loose. And these officers are going to shout a couple commands at him. He doesn't listen to their commands or follow their commands. They tackle him and they tase him because he continues to ignore their commands. The problem here is Brady Mistic is deaf in both of his ears, and the police officers have no idea. Now, when you watch this video, I want you to give me your gut reaction. Were the police officers in the wrong? Could this have been prevented? Or was there something that, despite the fact that he's deaf, Brady Mistic could have done to keep this all in check? Now, let's go to the footage here. It gets chaotic very quickly. These are the officers pulling up to the laundromat. This all went down in Idaho Springs, Colorado.
Sit back in your car.
Run up on us like that? Excuse me? Who do you think you are?
Pushing him.
Stop.
Now imagine for a second, this officer's so close, we're blacked out in the frame right now. Imagine you're totally deaf. You walk up to a laundromat, you see two officers, and they're kind of moving around. You can't hear a word. There's nothing, no sounds, no nothing. And they come after you and they start tackling you, they start to try to bring you down, and they're shouting commands at you, but you can't hear the commands. They're shouting that if you don't obey this command, you're going to get tased, and you can't hear the command, so you get tased. This is going to get really loud in just a moment, but just to go through it with me. And keep in mind how you're feeling about this. And if you think in this civil suit, this happened in September 18th of 2019, but the suit was just filed, if you think that this person deserves money for what happened to him.
We're in a fight.
This is the officer saying we're in a
We're
fight.
in a fight.
They're about to roll out of this.
Behind your back right now. Get your arms behind your back right now. Arms behind your back right now, or I'm gonna tase you.
There you go. Arms behind your back right now, or I'm going to tase you. Again, he cannot hear this. He cannot hear these messages.
Stop. Get your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. Other hand behind your back now. Other hand now.
I'm sorry. Cuff him, Summers.
Cuff him, Summers, he says to his partner. Now, the other officer's on the ground because they were rolling around a bit here. These two officers were also involved in another incident this same year where they tased an elderly man. That also resulted in some complaints against them. Now, you're just about to meet this guy, Brady Mistic. You're about to see him in the frame. He still has no idea what's going on.
Sit. Stay sitting.
Listen to him.
Stay down.
What you want? Why just help me?
I wonder what happened.
Don't run at us like that.
I'm deaf, he said.
Down.
Okay, I'm going to bring this back just a little bit because you'll hear this nice and close right now.
What you want? Why just help me?
Don't run at us like that. Just sit down. You're deaf?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you want?
Stay sitting now.
Just now, the officers are realizing that they just got into it with a deaf guy. And you see this other officer here on the ground. His leg is broken from the melee, and he literally spends the rest of the video, 5 minutes plus of this body cam video, complaining about how his leg is broken. Now, tell me what you think in the comments. Were these officers involved in an altercation here that could have been prevented? Should they have handled this differently? Should they have tried to make sure that the person could actually hear the commands they were given? Before I get to the response from the police department, which is also important, a deaf man who was arrested and jailed following a traffic stop in 2019 is now suing the officers involved, alleging use of excessive force, unlawful arrest, and malicious prosecution. Brady Mistic, who is deaf in both ears and uses ASL to communicate, was walking up to a laundromat in Idaho Springs, Colorado, when a police patrol car pulled up with its emergency lights on. Officers Nicholas Hanning and Ellie Summers followed him after Mystic allegedly ran a stop sign near the laundromat. So this wasn't some big giant crime. Officers gave command for him to get back in his car. They didn't know he was deaf, and they forced him to the ground and used a stun gun on him twice. This lawsuit was filed 2 years after this happened. Hanning's leg, that's the officer that was on the ground, was broken during the altercation. Here's a kicker for this, man. This is something else. Summers later charged Mystic, because they had to add an actual charge on, with possession of forged currency after finding movie prop money in his wallet while being booked at Clear Creek County Jail. The charge isn't mentioned in the police department's statement regarding the incident. They charged him for having movie prop money, which isn't even a crime if you have it displayed clearly on the money that it's prop money. I've got some in the studio right here. Here is the city of Idaho Springs and the Idaho Springs Police Department response to this whole thing. This says on September 17th, 2019, 2 years ago, officers from the Idaho Springs Police Department performed a traffic stop on a vehicle in the 1300 block of Idaho Street for a stop sign violation. The driver, Brady Mistic, immediately got out of his vehicle and quickly approached a clearly marked patrol car with emergency lights activated. You can see how this is written from the perspective of the police officers in a defensive position against them. The officers gave verbal commands for Mr. Mistic to get back in the vehicle. It was later determined Mr. Mistic was deaf, but this fact was not known to the officers during the initial encounter. Did you hear him talking? If you'd given him 3 seconds to speak, it's incredibly clear that this man is deaf. You could tell the impediment in his speech that is a result of him not being able to hear his own voice. They didn't even give him that long. Officers then directed Mr. Mistic to sit down. At one point, they attempted to gain control of him by putting him in handcuffs. Mr. Mistic resisted the officers, and a physical altercation took place. One of the officers was injured, a broken leg, due to the resistive actions of Mr. Mistic. He was transported to a local hospital. Short time later, he was clear for detention and transported to a facility, yada, yada, yada. They ultimately allowed him to participate in a diversion program. Wow, how nice of you, how kind. The diversion program is mentioned. However, this is not mentioned right here. I want you to see this part. Mystic spent 4 months, 4 months, 4 months, a stop sign running and phony Hollywood prop money in his wallet. 4 months in a county jail when he was unable to communicate with jail staff or his attorney except through written notes after he was denied an interpreter. They said you can't have an interpreter. The guy's got two issues with hearing in both ears. The police department statement said the district attorney's office allowed Mystic to participate in a diversion program. As part of his lawsuit, he's suing the city of Idaho Springs and the Board of County Commissioners for failure to accommodate his disability while in jail. So he spent 4 months behind bars for this crap. And they didn't give him an interpreter. I don't know if they don't have one or whatever, but they refused to do so. And he was behind bars for all this time, which undoubtedly will just upend your life. What do you think about this video? What do you think about the police's response here? Was it inevitable because this guy was deaf and he approached the police officers and they take such a defensive stance like this sometimes? Always afraid that the next person who's going to take out an officer is going to take out them. Or were they way too quick to judge here, too quick to act, too quick to not realize that a man had a disability which didn't allow him to hear the commands that they were saying? To me, this is a no-brainer. These officers acted too fast. They should have backed off just a little bit and tried to figure out what was going on in this situation. They had no reason whatsoever to believe Mr. Mistic was violent, was armed, was coming after them, or was any sort of threat overall in this situation. In fact, all they thought he did was run a stop sign going to a laundromat. And it wasn't even until afterwards that they could pin the phony Hollywood money on him that they really thought they had anything to hold this guy for. It's pretty crazy to me. I want to know what you think. And if you want to spread the word on this one and get his story out there, hit that share button right now. Those of you who are new here at facebook.com/thenewsjunkie, hit the follow button and you're going to be one of the people who are followers on the way to 80,000. We're getting closer and closer every day. Also, over on youtube.com/the news junkie, I always appreciate you over there for subscribing. The supporters for both channels, that means you pay a little bit of money each month and you get some benefits for that, which you'll see on the supporter page. But really, truly appreciate you. You keep me going, and you're absolutely the best. And there's more of you by the day. So thank you for that support. Again, I'll be looking for your comments. I'm always watching. I appreciate you watching. We'll talk to you again real soon.